all our Prime Ministers, Gough Whitlam was the one I knew best and spent most time with. And as I explained in a long piece in my autobiography, A Thinking Read, we first met in September 1954 at a caucus dinner for Clement Attlee in Canberra, and this began a 60-year friendship with him and later Margaret. Now, Whitlam was the architect of bipartisanship in foreign affairs, and he entered what you can only describe as a demonology in foreign policy, an achievement which was maintained by Fraser, Hawke and Keating. Whitlam's visit to China in July 1971 was hailed by Billy McMahon as an act of extraordinary rashness and disloyalty to the American ally, a charge which fell flat when only weeks later Richard Nixon announced he was going to fly to Beijing to meet Mao Zedong. Whitlam's platform was by far the widest and most generous approach to policy in Australia's history, and he began a long campaign to explain his ideas years in advance of winning office. And he created a new agenda for Australian politics, took the Commonwealth into education and city planning, began dismantling tariffs, pushed law and constitutional reform, opportunities for women, the arts, the environment and Aborigines. The Hansard Index records Gough Whitlam's astounding industry. He spoke more and asked or answered more questions on a far wider range of subjects than any member in the history of the House of Representatives. Now, working on an average of 72 items in each column of the index, I calculated that in the 10 years, 1969-1978, Whitlam made 11,360 contributions. 11,360 contributions. The highest number was in 1971, 2,412 entries. The lowest in 1978, 580, the year he resigned. The numbers fell in the years of his prime ministership because he was limited to answering questions and unable to ask them. But no doubt if he'd been able to ask questions of himself, the questions would have been rippers and the answers would have been even better. So it must have been very frustrating. Of course, the impact of post-industrial change, the oil shock of 1973-74, growth of a global economy made the Whitlam government seem ill-prepared. Now, internationally, it was not Robinson Crusoe on that. During his second term, the reform program was carved up by the Senate, and the substantial achievements of the government were obscured by the impact of the wages explosion and a rapid increase in unemployment. Whitlam appointed me as first chair of the Film and Television School. We overlapped for a few months in the House of Representatives, and I succeeded him as Australia's representative to UNESCO and the World Heritage Committee in Paris. I took the view that somebody had to do it. Now, Malcolm Fraser, of course, became Prime Minister after the Governor-General dismissed Whitlam on the 11th of November 1975 and defeated Whitlam heavily in the elections of 75 and 1977. In 2008, I hosted a lunch in Melbourne for Gough Whitlam and Malcolm Fraser. And as they aged, they found that they had much in common on many important issues, and indeed that they detested the same people. Whitlam came to blame Kerr entirely for the dismissal, and Fraser hardly at all, arguing that it's the job of opposition leaders to bring down governments. And opposition leaders really, if they want to try and wreck the show, that's part of the job. The lunch was hilarious and much enjoyed by other guests who included Julian Burnside, Graham Freudenberg, the great speechwriter, John Clark and Brian Dorr, Rafe Matthews, who'd once been Gough's principal private secretary. And Gough and I kept up contact right at the end. He was our longest-lived Prime Minister. At his funeral in Sydney, was an amazing outpouring of emotion.